Hey there, Danny with Right Foot Down. I messed up this ad read so many times because I really want to tell you about Track Monkey Apparel. They make great quality enthusiast shirts along with hats, stickers, watches, patches, you name it. A couple of my personal favorites are their Life is Better at the Track tee and their One Track Mind tee. You should really check them out and see for yourself. Their products are great for you or the gearhead in your life. Visit trackmonkeyapparel.com.
You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit RightFootDown for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Car Show. I'm your host, Ike. Today we are joined by fellow having Ike in their name person, Mike Parris. He is the production manager / car reviewer, which is really why we're talking to him, over at Washington's top news, WTOP. Mike, how are you doing this evening?
From the Glass Enclosed Nerve Center, we're doing a fine out here.
Excellent. So it's interesting to me, first of all, because you're one of the... Oh, something just went a little funky monkey on me, of course. Mike, can you still hear me well?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I don't know what the heck that was. So I find it interesting. You're one of the few people I've come across by mistake in my automotive reviews because for those of you who aren't from the D.C. metropolitan area, if you need traffic or weather or any of that information, you have to turn on WTOP. So one day, probably like maybe a couple years ago now, I was sitting in traffic and I heard we got Mike Parris coming up next talking about a new car. And I was like, oh, this kind of makes my day a little bit better, a little bit brighter. So you do the car reviews over with WTOP, which is something I find absolutely fascinating because you have to take your articles you write and do, they're, well thought out, they're very long, and you have to kind of compress it down into 90 seconds, 2 minutes of like discussion with the host of the show that day. How do you manage to really kind of do that and do it as well as you are able to?
I wish I could say it was a lot of preparation, but really it's not. It's a race against the clock, and the anchor who always interviews me asks the question, so we have about maybe 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah.
Up into it. So you're kind of trying to hit the bullet points in the 2 or sometimes 3 minutes that you actually have.
And it is kind of fascinating because I know who's listening to my audience. There are a lot of car nuts, more or less. And what you have to do is kind of explain it to the general populace, which, I think you do, a very good job. I want to have you on the show. Otherwise, it seems like you do a very good job of, conveying what the essence of this car is and kind of, sometimes I'm not going to say you get asked silly questions, but there's, you manage to steer it towards, the heart and soul of what really matters in this or, whatever vehicle you're reviewing this week. So,
yeah. Thanks. You really got to kind of hop into it and get into it really quick, or else who knows what you're going to do. You're going to waste 2 or 3 minutes of valuable airtime on WTOP, which has cost a lot of money if you want to buy a minute. So these car manufacturers and cars I'm driving, they get a nice added value benefit of me talking about what I'm driving and how I like it or how I don't like it so much.
See, this is why I would never make it on radio, because I like to ramble so much. Like long form is my bread and butter. So how did you manage to get into doing what you're doing with the cars? Like, let's start from the beginning. Well, how did you get into the industry? Did you get into it for, the car perspective? Did you get into it for the production side of things? Like, how did you get from where you began to hear, basically?
All started back in high school. I answered an ad for helping set up remote broadcasts for a local radio station, and so I did it for a summer, driving a van and pulling a trailer and helping out, doing what I could do, and it kind of started from there, and ended up help running the board during what they called Sunday the God Squad, where you're running all the your religious shows and the paid programming, and kind of didn't leave for about 5 or 10 years. So I just kind of got into radio and didn't want to work for a living, so that's what I did.
So then, I know, because it seems like such a good gig working for, especially a network like WTOP. You just get used to hearing a lot of praise, because you guys have saved me just from a ton of absolute nightmare out on the highway. So, where's traffic in the country? Washington, D.C. So, how did you get from the God Squad to the car guy?
Well, it all has to do with consolidation. Working for radio stations that were bought out by WTOP, and I just kind of came in as a package deal to be in the newsroom and help out, do what I could do, and I just kind of stuck around. And if you're here long enough, you just kind of do what you want to do and try to have someone that's higher than you tell you to say no about doing a car report. But when you look at WTOP, they've been doing car reports for, I don't know, nearly 30 years. If you look at the group that we belong to, the Washington Auto Press Association, one of the founding members was a man named John Linker, who did the car report on WTOP for decades. And so I just wanted to try to carry on that tradition after a decade of it not being on the air. It just had to come back.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ray of, hope to those of us between, admittedly some pretty terrible news out in the world as of late. So, like, oh, that's awful. Ooh, cars, more awful, and now I'm stuck in traffic, and this is how this goes. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's seems to be the way of life. But so, like, how long ago did you start doing this whole process?
Well, I started about 4 or 5 years ago, about trying to get it back on the air and talking to the people that I had to talk to in order to get some of these vehicles that I drive. So it took a while to either join the Washington Auto Press, or WAPA, which is called, to kind of get my foot back in the door and to try to get TOP back into the car game.
So what was the first vehicle you tried to get your hands on? Because I feel like every automotive press guy has I got this down. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get my hands on this. And then what was the car you actually ended up with?
Well, I guess the 2013 Nissan Rogue and the 2014 Acura MDX. So we started right over with crossover, right in that crossover craze, and I got two of the better selling ones to start off with.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's fascinating is I'm doing a whole series myself on SUVs as we speak. So as I'm trying to understand them. So I got a question that leads into that I'm going to get back to, but I think we need to answer this question first, which is, when did you get into cars? Like, when did you find yourself, was it something you were born into, or was this something you grew an appreciation of?
Well, as growing up as a kid, my parents had a house near Cape May, New Jersey, and they had a nice bookstore that was right in the main square there, and they had lots of magazines, and one of the magazines in there that I vividly remember was the DuPont Registry. And that started the love that you could actually not have to look for like a calendar for these cars, that you can actually find a magazine that sells these cars, and just to look at them, and all the other car magazines, and the Sports Car International, all these other magazines that I discovered, and all these cool cars that I would love to drive popped into my head, and that's pretty much where it started, maybe about age 11 or 12.
So then, what was your first car you got into?
Well, the first car was an amazing, awesome automobile. The 1986 Nissan Pulsar NX. Nearly 70 horsepower and a 3-speed automatic. It didn't go anywhere, but heck, it looked squarish with pop-up headlights.
I mean, pop-up headlights, yay. That's kind of cool, I guess, now. Although, So how did that meet? Because they always do. How did that car meet its untimely demise?
Well, it just had me as the driver. That's how it really met its untimely demise. A 16-year-old with a car, which is freedom for us when we first get that driver's license. So a car that had maybe 20 or 30,000 miles quickly had over 100,000 miles on it, and goes racing in a parking lot with an equally terrible car, the Tempo. A friend of mine had a Tempo. We'd race through the parking lot of a high school just over these speed bumps, going at least 24 miles per hour in these parking lots. But yeah, I'm sure that didn't help for hours on end.
Yeah, I pictured the cop watching that race like, hey, I think those kids are racing. No, I don't think they're racing. They're going like maybe 15. Like, yeah.
Maybe,
yeah. I mean, but every kid needs a crap car to start off with, because that's how you really learn to appreciate, like driving. Like, you get the freedom. If every kid got, a Bugatti to start off with, we'd all be spoiled brats. So,
my second car is where it got a little bit more fun. The Porsche 928, a 1979 Euro edition Porsche 928, red with the red wheels and the big Kong wing on the back. Man, it almost made me broke, but it was a lot of fun when it did run.
I was going to say, though, terribly unreliable. So what was constantly going wrong with that for you?
What didn't go wrong with that car? Most everything went wrong with the car. Fuel systems, the broken timing belt, anything that could go wrong pretty much went wrong with the car. But heck, I was an idiot, and I bought another one about 10 years later, so I must have some problems in my head.
You're talking to a man who has a broken Volvo in his garage that he's putting an Audi motor in, who just went and looked at a 1971 Opel Speedster, going like, yeah, I could get that. Like, does it run? Like, we don't know. Like, oh, that's good. That's a no. That's always a no. They say, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It did once.
Yeah. At some point, this one also ended up in I seem to have an affinity for, like, how did you get a hold of the car? Like, well, it was abandoned in a field, so we just took possession of it. Like, oh, okay. And that's just a random aside with that. So, Porsche 928, from a Pulsar, like, did you get the Benz? Like, that's just like from front wheel crap box to, sports car rear wheel drive. That's got to be getting used to. But it puts you in the poorhouse. So
it put me in the poorhouse. And an 18-year-old with a Porsche 928 is probably not the smartest thing to ever do. But you got to do it at least once.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're gonna make a stupid decision, make it with your heart. So
exactly.
Yeah. So what? Give us some of the other highlights then from, because I imagine the Porsche met its demise by just basically like, I can't afford to keep it. It just needs to go away.
Yeah, pretty much. But I lasted about 7 or 8 years with that car.
Oh, wow.
I drove that in conjunction with 87 Buick Grand National and some other. I think it was a Chevy Cavalier. The first new car I bought was a 96 Chevy Cavalier. And between those three cars, at least one of them always ran.
Which is remarkable given the pedigree of those three cars. So
exactly.
So you're a bit of like, one of us as an automotive journalist, which is like there's like there's just the guys who like going out there and they're only into muscle cars, they're only into the sports cars. You seem to have an affinity for a little bit more of the oddball stuff because Grand National is a little bit peculiar, great car, but it's a little bit. You have to explain to someone why it's a bit cool. And like a 928, it's a Porsche, it's badass. But, it's not a 911, so you kind of got to explain why it's badass. And then, I don't know how a Cavalier snuck in there. I mean, did you find yourself lost on a Chevy lot? But
well, that was the Porsche 928 blowing a clutch near a Chevrolet dealership. So you had to be on the air at 3 p.m., and it's 1:30. You go in. You buy a Chevy Cavalier so you can make your air shift at 3 p.m.
What's the cheapest car you got? Cavalier. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much how it was. Like, I'd like an Impala SS. That's 20-something. I'm like, I'll have something less.
So, I'm just fascinated by this. So then, what is in your stable today?
Well, I have a 2004 Pontiac GTO, the only car that I've kept this long in all my years. It's probably one of the better cars I've driven. It's maybe not the best to look at, but man, does it really treat you right when you're driving this car. It's comfortable, it can perform pretty well, and heck, who cares if it flies under the radar? It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, all that means is you get less speeding tickets. Is that all you got? That's the daily driver?
We have that, and my wife has an equally exciting yet boring car to drive, the rare Chevrolet HHR SS, which is when we were looking for a car when we had our first child, we needed something with some room and cheap, and so I was like, oh, we should look at this, the SS version, of course, and that's we've equally kept that car very long too, and the interior is dreadful. It's the GM awfulness of hard plastics, but it's very useful, and we just can't seem to get rid of it. We would like to get something, but it's like, nah, it's too useful. You can use it all the time and throw things in it. You really don't care what happens inside because it's just hard plastic, so you don't really worry too much about it, and it's built like a tank for once.
Yeah, it's that generation of GM is like the herpes of automobiles. They, for whatever reason, last forever. Because the build quality wasn't that great, but for whatever reason, when they do break, it's like you can spend $100 fixing it, or you can go out and get a new car payment. But you're a bit embarrassed when you kind of show up with it. Like, you always have to be an explanation. No. It's not. It's a cold sore, I swear. Like, no. It's cool. Believe me. No, it's a GTO. I know it doesn't look like one, but you know it's badass. Trust me. It's got an LS. It's got an LS.
And none of them are stock. My car was stock for maybe 2 months, and then you just start the sickness that you come in with modifying these cars. And of course, I have it very badly. So of course, nothing is as it was in 2004 when I bought it.
Yeah. So since you went down that path, you got to tell me, what did you do to it? Because it's always, Pontiac folk are a special breed of modifier. So
yes.
Yeah.
So you start off with the basic mods of an exhaust, and then you go to headers, and then I went to turbo, and then different heads, and just everything. Just anything that you could do to it, I did to it. And of course, it's money that you'll never ever see again. But you do have fun with a car with nearly 600 horsepower, and the car that started off with 350.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's kind of plain Jane, but it is. The great thing about that too is I've driven one of those. Is they handle a lot better than you would think a 2004 GM product would, primarily because of the Australian influence. But it's surprising.
Yeah,
it's a lot better than you would think. So
yeah, it's probably one of the better GM interiors up until a couple of years ago of any of the GM cars that had, because didn't have the hard plastics, and they didn't have the cruddy leather. It was actually very nice quality stuff because the car was expensive in Australia. These were $50,000 cars in Australia, which we were getting for, at the time buying, it said 34, but you weren't paying any more than $25,000 for these cars new.
Yeah, because they couldn't. It's kind of the shame of like GM. They bring a product that we all want to drive, but then they don't spend any money advertising it, like the Chevy SS. That's what we all want. Big old V8, rear-wheel drive. You used to be able to get it with a manual, I think, but it's like, should we put any money into advertising this? Like, hey, no one's buying it, so we're just going to discontinue it. Like, wait, we didn't know you were making it. Like, just
that's the GM way.
Yeah.
Bring wonderful cars and don't say anything about them.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, they just push stuff on us like the Enclave. Like, we don't want that. Like, stop it. Like, just roll up a newspaper and whack them in the nose. So, so then you're a proper car nut, obviously. So the first few cars you got were SUVs. So this is, bringing it back to where we kind of left off with, your first couple of review cars. How did you kind of manage to, give your honest opinion of those vehicles? Maybe not honest opinion, but like, how did you manage to kind of put yourself in the mindset of the buyer of that vehicle, I guess?
Yeah, you really have to, and it does take a little bit of time to kind of get into the swing of things. Like, I like this is much better than I'm driving now, but I'm driving a 10-year-old car, so of course it's going to be totally different inside, and you're going to have the cool tech that maybe a 10-year-old car doesn't have. So you're really trying to feel your way through, and so it takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to it, but you don't want to be that sarcastic fool that no one's going to understand as well that maybe I would like to be, but that's not going to work for the audience that's going to be looking or listening to what I have to say or write.
Yeah, because it's, again, it's such a weird spot because, like, you don't write for a venue like, Road and Track or Jalopnik or something where this is just, car bores coming out and, like, hunting out this information. You're writing for the people who are reading your article are probably very interested in buying that more than probably any other type of, media outlet out there.
We're definitely not talking to this rabid, unwashed masses like us that live, breathe, and just want to be in cars and talk about cars and look at cars. So you just have to kind of dial it back about 75% on what you really want to say.
Yeah. Why are you buying? Okay, so that brings me. I was going to go off on a tangent, but I'm like, I got another tangent that I want to go off on this one. So then, what's the worst car that you've had that you get to review so far? Maybe not
the Mitsubishi i-MiEV was probably the worst car that I've driven in a long time. Nowadays, most of these cars are actually pretty darn good. The build quality is pretty good. Like, the gaps aren't like they used to be, but the i-MiEV was a special car due to no power. It was pretty much a golf cart that went on the highway.
Yeah, it was. It's such a. I love Mitsubishi. Me and Mitsubishi get along well, but I have no idea what the hell they were doing with that thing. Because they didn't even design and build it. They just brought, it was like a French car that they brought over here and went, yeah, this is good. Like, no, just stop. Stop, Mitsubishi. Just, yeah. So then, out of all the cars you've driven, what's your favorite car you've had to drive?
Man, there's been a couple of pretty cool cars. I'd say maybe in 2016, the best car I drove was the Audi S8 Plus. Just a brutal luxury car with 605 horsepower. It could humiliate just about anything on the road that you see out there and do it in supreme comfort. And this year, man, the Alfa Giulia is something else. I don't know how it will last, and I wouldn't want to own it out of warranty, but man, does it sing. That V6, that twin-turbo V6 just makes noises and makes the car go very fast.
Can I ask you, how tall are you?
I'm 5'8", so I fit without a problem.
Okay, because I was going to say, because that door, I'm 6'2", getting into a Giulia is because the door isn't where the door should be on that car, right? It's, I can't tell if it's too far forward or if it's just not big enough or what, but for whatever reason, that's with the exception of the Viper, that's the most awkward car for me to get into and out of.
The 4C isn't easier either.
Yeah, I haven't had the pleasure of getting close to one of those things. Alfa Romeo tends to shoo me away, bad, go away. No, just we know you, just go, get out of here. I'm surprised they live in your Fiats, to be perfectly honest. But I don't know. There's this. So in your, tenure here as doing car reviews, do you see a change in the trend? Because when you began, the midsize SUV was kind of all the rage. And, from this podcaster's perspective, we seem to be going maybe towards smaller SUVs, and super high horsepower sedans seem to be kind of the trend line as far as I see it. Do you see anything different coming the way?
Yeah, the mini SUV is the hottest ticket, I'd say, right now. I see a lot of those, and they're just not there yet. All the ones I drive, they have something that's glaringly wrong. They've been rushed to the market very fast, and either if you pick each one, you're I don't like this for that. If they can make one with a transmission that wasn't awful and an interior that wasn't as noisy as a Penn State football game on Saturday or something like that, they all have one little thing, they were kind of rushed to the market way too fast than they should have been, so they're not quite all baked out yet. But yeah, that, and you got to do something with a high horsepower, because no one is really buying sedans anymore. Sedans or coupes, cars are almost passé, I would say, lately. It's all SUVs and little crossovers seem to be the rage right now.
Mm-hmm. And does that hurt your soul as much as it hurts mine?
It does. As someone who got into the SUV craze like in 1996 when they first came out, and then quickly is like, I'm a car guy. I had an SUV or two, and I'm done with those for now. So, but yeah, some of these sedans are just great cars right now, and no one's really buying them.
Now, you recently reviewed a Ford King Ranch, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the little F-250.
Yeah. Are you aware there's a proper way to say King Ranch?
What is it?
You have to elongate everything, so it's King Ranch. So the longer you can stretch that out, the longer you stretch it out, the more proper that is. So just so you're aware that this is knowledge that needs to be spread along the car community, because I feel like whoever drives that vehicle, and that's a little takeaway. There's another podcast out there called the Team Clear Cut that always makes that joke, but there's the guy who owns a King Ranch. I feel like owns some sort of like semi-shady small business. So like, and he's like, hey, Bob, what kind of car do you drive? Me? I drive a King Ranch. Like, all right, Bob, I'm going to leave now because you're freaking me out. Like,
that's a lot of vehicle. That's one doozy of an automobile, and not a cheap ride too.
No, and that's another these crazy luxury pickup trucks coming out. Like that's another trend that wasn't around 10 years ago. Like
pickup trucks in general are nutty priced. I bought one in 2011 when we bought a house that needed a lot of work, and man, the price now would be $20,000 more than what I paid for it for the same vehicle in 2011. So yeah, the prices have just skyrocketed on those things.
Mm-hmm. That my hidden secret for anyone who needs to get a pickup truck: A, always buy used, and B, just type DWY into Craigslist, because they'll always come up with some poor guy who has to get rid of his pickup truck because he got a DWI. Without fail, like. Especially in the fall, for whatever reason. I think it's after all the summer mistakes that just pops up. It's I don't know. It's so fascinating. So you've driven like how many times a month did you actually drive your own vehicle? Because to my experience, like when you get these loaner cars, you get them for about a week, maybe two, if they're feeling extra generous. So like, how often are you actually driving around your own personal vehicle?
It's not very often, and usually I go into the garage to start a car, and it's deader than Julius Caesar. So it's back on the charger. Like the charger had blown the fuse or slipped the fuse. So I'm like, oh man, I didn't even know that. So yeah, maybe once or twice a month am I really driving my own car.
Yeah, and like it's gotta be fascinating. So I don't know. I'm just so like. I'm having a big brain fart because there's like a million questions and I'm trying to force one out because it's such an interesting perspective because you're the lone car guy over at WTOP, right? You handle all the car business.
Yep, I'm the only one who does it. I don't want anyone else to take over my dream, so I got to keep them all out. I keep them and say, oh, there's no such thing.
Yeah,
people, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. So you do like all the writing, all the photography, you do the reviews on the radio, and you know you're also a production manager over there, so I'm sure you're doing stuff like with the radio show as it goes on. You know, I say radio show with radio station. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So like, come on, Ike, you got it. You can figure it out.
You can do it.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, how long? You know, is a typical like day for you? Because I imagine it's fairly, you know, imagine you're not waking up at 9, going to sleep at 5. You know, this is something where you're probably working a very long day, or am I just really bad at what I do, where I need 10 hours to do what you can do in 8?
It really depends on the day and what's really going on in the world, because WTOP, not only being the news station in D.C., is also the top billing radio station in all the country, and to do that out of the top 1 or 2 markets in the country is really something else. So we have a lot of commercials on here, and we also have sports. We also have we carry the Nationals on our sister station, and we carry the Caps, and we carry the Wizards. So with that also comes their commercials too. So it's a pretty busy day. Some days you get the nice 7-8 hour day, and sometimes you're here for 12 or 14 hours, and then you still got to do your other work. You still got to talk about cars. You still got to write about them. So it can be a hectic day, but it beats working for a living is why I do this.
Ain't that the truth? So when you talk about, it is a big market, biggest market, and like you said, you've got tons of commercials. Not like, oh my God, but you're good at what you do over there at the station for good reason. You guys are sought after. Are you having manufacturers fight for you to review a vehicle?
Well, not really. It's pretty much handled by other people that pretty much handle the scheduling and everything, and still trying to get to some of the manufacturers to do something is pretty much a kick in the head. I got to say that the people that deal with media, I sometimes don't know why they're in that position, because they don't want to deal with the media. If you're there as a media person for a car company, you should probably deal with the media, especially for someone who works for a news station who can say something nice or something not so nice. Well, I've done it before where I was like, oh, well, how about this car? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because they refuse to answer the phone or email, so we won't talk about that car. So that happens, and it's just we would think that people would want to get their cars reviewed. So that's kind of the whole fun and games of this business.
Mm-hmm. I as a podcaster, in new media, because we got the website, we got the podcast, we got the YouTube stuff, trying to explain to, and I'm sure, because you got the benefit of, like, I hate to use the phrase old media, but radio, you could be 80 and you know what the hell radio is.
Yes. And it's also easier to measure also, because there's ratings on the radio station, so you can kind of go back. It's like, oh, during this time, this is about how many people were listening, where it's a lot harder in the new media to really quantify what's really going on.
Yeah, exactly. But trying to just explain to them, podcasting, I think, is the last thing, like, most people over 50 know about. And that seems to be what the media people do. And there are certain manufacturers where I've had to explain to them what a podcast is, how people download it, and they're like, I don't understand. Do people actually do this? Like, you are just wearing me out. And so you've gotten to, this is, Ike is going to gripe about being a podcaster for the next 5 minutes. I could do that on another episode. It's just fascinating me because, I don't want you to call out anyone, but I'm sure there's cars out there where you really, really want to get your hands on them, and, because maybe you think it's going to be a good car and you want to give a glowing review if it is a good vehicle, and they're like, you do what with a radio? And like, oh, we don't really understand. Like, or you just get the cold shoulder, like you're sending emails, calls, and everything, and it's like, how do these people, I don't know, keep jobs or whatever? I'm bitching for you, yeah.
yeah, maybe just answer the email every once in a while, or a phone call.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want to do is to call, like, your boss. But after a while, if you want to get cars to review, you have to kind of move the ball along. And if you have to talk to somebody's manager or something like, hello, I've been trying to do this for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, that maybe we can kind of move this along to either say yes or no. If it's no, that's fine. I can deal with that. Yeah. But an answer is all I really ask for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to know so I can put on my little pegboard and we can figure out if I can get stuff from you or not. Because if it's just maybe's no good for anyone. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not good for you and it's not good for me. So, you said the iMeave. See, I feel like the weird Mitsubishi thing, the more I think about that, it's kind of a cop-out because that's an electric car and that's a crappy electric car. It's basically, like you said, just a golf cart. What's the okay? Let me rephrase the question here. Maybe not what's the worst car mechanically you've driven. What's the car you've driven where you're like, I will never ever ever buy one of these things or take it for free from anyone ever? Like
the last Jeep Compass, the 2015 to 2016 Jeep Compass was just a dreadful automobile. Loud, slow, interior stunk, where I just had the 2017 not long ago, and I'm like, I can't believe they should have renamed the car. It's so much better than the last one.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how Dodge seems to get away with that, because the Avenger, in my mind, was the worst product on the planet ever.
That's a pretty bad car.
Yeah. Did the Compass have the same terrible 3-speed overdrive transmission in it? Because
this one had the CVT, which made it even worse.
Dodge and CVT. I've had some bad experiences with Dodge, which is why they don't answer my phone calls. I at least understand that one. Fascinating. So, this being the podcast of record, I kind of briefed you. There's going to be some questions off the cuff. Actually, did I put that in email? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sitting here. So, I call these our Inside the Actors Studios questions. Let me actually pull up the list here, because it's being a pain in the butt. There we go. So these are just a series of questions, and as past guests pointed out, we kind of have to qualify this. This is the answers as we sit today, because as car people, it would be the same equivalent if you asked, which is your favorite child. This is in the moment as we sit here and speak. So, first question is a fairly easy one. What's your favorite car?
Favorite car would be none tested and probably never going to have would be the Ferrari F40. That would just, since 1987 or 88, I wanted one of those, and not going to happen, but that's probably the most favorite of all automobiles that I know of.
That is like automobile heaven right there, because it's just pure essence of what a super/hypercar really should be.
My first real introduction to a car review per se was in 1996. I went to the then Ferrari of Washington, which was in a office park pretty much, and got to drive the 355 GTB, and it was awesome. And they had 3 Ferrari F40s being serviced in there, and I just looked and I was like, I just have to touch it. I have to sit in it. And it was just everything you want it to be. Too bad I couldn't have driven it.
Random aside on that, what's the most expensive car you've reviewed?
That would be the Bentley Speed. It was the Bentley Mulsanne Speed, which I think had an as-tested price of $404,000 or something like that. It was something ridiculous.
What was the car you got into immediately following that car?
It was a Alfa Romeo 4C.
See, I was hoping you got out of the Bentley Mulsanne and into a Mitsubishi Mirage, and your brain just exploded.
No, after that was the smart car convertible. So not too far off.
Well, you know what? What's your smart car?
It was the 17 smart car.
Was it the little white one with the orange top they had in their press fleet?
The little orange top.
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually love that car.
Actually pretty fun. I was surprised.
Yeah. I want one with a manual transmission, because they make them with a manual in the States. I don't know how many were sold, but I'm like, if I get a convertible one of these with the manual transmission, it's basically a mini 911 at that point. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
You're looking at least 6 or 7 that made it over here.
Yeah, I know. Finding that car, because I'm sure it's a car. Because when I contacted Smart to try and get that car for a long-term loaner, they're like, yeah, we don't have any manuals in our fleet. You can try calling around to local dealers, but I don't think any of them in the East Coast have a manual transmission. Oh, good.
Yeah, I sort of look for another unicorn, the Cadillac CTSV wagon with the manual that isn't $70,000 now. I'm looking for the normal price for a CTSV wagon, but I think that ship has gone and sailed far away.
Yeah, I know. I wanted one of those too. When I got my before I blew the head gaskets in it, one of the cars I was looking for before I got my V70R, which thin blue head gaskets was I wanted a Cadillac CTSV. It is a cool car when it runs, and it's a great car until it blows 2 head gaskets, and you get rid of it because it's supposed to haul around the kid, and it doesn't do that with blown head gaskets. I really wanted a Cadillac CTSV, and I could not find one for a decent price, like anywhere in the world. Yeah. I mean, I was like, I will fly out to Oregon and get one if I need to. I don't think there's like any in the States like that are for sale.
No, and if they are, they're $75,000, which they were more than they were new when they sold. So it's not going to be this fool.
No, I know. I looked up the production numbers, like, because I was curious about it. I think there was, in the entire run of the wagons, there was only 600 made that were black with a manual transmission.
Wow.
Yeah, which is just like, I want that color and I want that stick shift, and I'm never going to find it. Yeah. So.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So then back to our question here. So what's your least favorite car?
The least favorite car, that Jeep was pretty far up there. The Nissan Versa Note was also a pretty rank car to drive. Had lots of space, but had no power, and the CVT just droned on and on and on, and you got nowhere for that drone.
Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, this is open to all time. So it doesn't have to be a car necessarily you drove. This is the least favorite car ever of all time. Like if someone offered you this car for free, you would, or like you can have this car, you can be shot. You're like, where am I going to be shot at exactly?
I guess the Le Car would probably be my gunshot to the knee would be happen there.
Yeah. You don't like the Le Car? No, I don't like the Le Car. Terrible car.
Just looks awful, and it just looks like you want to push it over.
Yeah, cow tipping isn't a thing. As a Midwest boy, like, cow tipping's not a thing, but tipping over top-heavy cars is a thing. Like, that's the only reason I would have a Smarts, because now I have a garage, so you have to hide it.
Yeah, you can put it in sideways and still get another car in.
Yeah, well, especially because my other car's a Ford Fiesta ST, so I could just park them in there. I have a 3-car garage. So
also another cool car.
Yeah, they do. Great little cars. Now, that's the thing. Whenever anyone asks me what's the best car on the road right now, I always tell them Ford Fiesta ST. Now that's a hard car or a hard question to think about, or to answer without really spending a lot of time thinking about it. But off the top of your head, what's the best car on the road right now?
Man, that's a tough one. It's for a mid-size car, can't beat the Ford Fusion Sport. That's a lot of fun for $32,000, and you get twin turbos and a big V6, and it goes fast and it's pretty comfortable. And thank goodness it has all-wheel drive, or else the torque's here to be monumental in that thing. But that's a lot of fun for a car like that. And a smaller car, man, I gotta say that if I had to buy a little crossover, it's maybe not the most popular choice, but the little Kia Soul Exclaim with the new turbo engine can't be beat. You can fit a lot of people in there, and it's funky enough that it kind of stands out, and it drives okay.
Mm-hmm. The Soul gets a lot of hate. Although if I'm going for a weird car, I think I'm going for Juke, just because like that's a car that you either love or you vomit when you see it drive by.
No, yeah, especially the Sport or the Sport edition with the different color wheels and trim. It's really stands out.
There's a gentleman down the street from me who owns a Nismo version of it. I'm trying to figure out if it's Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I see it every day when I drive home, and I'm like, I don't know whether to vomit or not. Like I just don't know what to do with this car. Like, but I'm glad someone bought it.
You're also talking to someone who owned and bought brand new an Isuzu Via-Cross back when they first came out. So I guess I can't really talk.
Oh my God! Well, we got to talk about that. Hold on. You bought it new? You said when it first came out.
Yeah, I bought it brand new. I think I had like one of the first ones in the DC area.
Why did you let that get away? Like that's such a weird, funky car. Like.
It was a weird, funky car, and I put like 70,000 miles on it in a couple of years. It was just time to move on, but it's pretty useless, pretty much as a SUV could be. It had 2 doors, and you couldn't really put much in it, and the rear seats, they sort of folded up, but they didn't fold down, so pretty useless as an SUV, but kind of funky, and it stood out. That's one thing I could definitely say. It stood out in the crowd.
Yeah. So then, you are a proper car guy. I'm very impressed. Like, you know, I was a little nervous that you'd be like, well, I had a Mustang, and then I got, you know, another Mustang, and now I review cars. I was a little nervous. I got from your reviews and stuff you do online that you were a bit funky out there, but a Via Cross and liking the smart car. Now, what do you feel about the Mitsubishi Mirage?
I'm not a huge fan.
Okay.
It's just not. It's not for me. As growing up, my sisters had a Mirage, and I think it was like 2002, 2003, and the thing was indestructible. The little Mirage coupe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit bigger than it was now, but two girls learning how to drive, and the thing lasted almost 300,000 miles, and would probably be going today if it didn't meet its demise with a dump truck on 95. But the thing was a tank.
Yeah, they're you know, I got a lot more to say about Mitsubishi, but this is an hour-long program, so we're going to try and not go off on that tangent. So we're going to try and rein Ike back in and go back to our Inside the Actor Studio questions here. So what is your what is your most favorite vehicle modification trend? So, like, if you think about, like, you see this on a car and you're like, you know, maybe I don't want to do that to my car, but that's something I appreciate someone else does to their car. So we're talking like stance, brodozer, truck nuts, you know, underglow, whatever you think of.
It can really stand out, and I wouldn't do it, but heck, it really does liven up some really cruddy cars out there. So go all for the rat.
I missed it. You got cut off there. So you said rat rod?
What's that?
You got cut off when you were initially saying for whatever.
Oh, okay.
What kind of trend was it? What kind of modification?
Okay, it'd definitely be doesn't really enhance the performance, but the wrap that you can put on the car, the 3M or whatever. If you can really have a good wrap, it looks good, but a lot of it's junk. But when you see one done right, it's pretty impressive and not cheap.
Yeah. No, they are not cheap. So then what is your least favorite modification trend?
The stance of cars in that lately. The wheels that are, I don't know, got the extreme look to them. They got the I don't get the stance. I don't get the whole stance thing nowadays. It's just it's not for me.
So
you're ruining a car that can turn.
Exactly. So what is your car you dread being stuck behind at a red light?
Toyota Camry, without a doubt.
Mm.
The Toyota Camry seems to be owned mostly by people that maybe don't have a license, earned it from a Cracker Jack box, maybe their first day driving. You don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get someone that's either doing 97 miles per hour or 4 miles per hour with the turn signal on, and they're going to go straight.
Mm. What automotive sound or noise do you love?
A nice sounding turbocharger on a car. Sounds very good.
Mm-hmm. What automotive sound or noise do you hate?
Fart can exhaust on cruddy cars.
That is the number one answer from everyone. Like, no one likes those. I don't know why they still keep putting those on cars. So what profession in the automotive community, so anything from the guy changing oil at Jiffy Lube to, Sergio Margione, like, would you like to try? Like, if this was another life, let's say, like, what would you want to do? Yeah.
I don't know. Test driving a vehicle sounds fun. I'm sure it's got a lot of tedious baloney stuff, but just starting from sort of the beginning and seeing a car actually hit the road would be pretty exciting in my book, from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. So I think that would be fun. What job do you think you'd be worst at if you were just dropped into an automotive job? Which one do you think you'd be worst at?
Probably on the assembly line. I would probably mess up all the time on it and stop the assembly line most likely 2 or 3 times a day.
Like, Mike, we got to talk. Like, you put 2 right doors on one car. Like, well, It's a coupe, Mike. Like, oh, like well, that's an issue. So then we got a little game here that I like to do. So I'm going to give you a car, or I'm going to give you a choice between two cars, and you have to keep these cars the way they're modified. So
Okay.
You can do whatever you want with them, but this is going to be your new daily driver, and you got to pick between one of these two. So
Okay.
the first one is a Le Car,
That's hot.
but it's wrapped perfectly, however you want it to be wrapped. It's just done extremely well. The other option is a Ferrari F40, but it's been stanced to within an inch of its life.
Man, I'm gonna have to go with the F40.
Yeah, you
I'll
got to
just get laughed at.
you got to remember you're driving this thing to DC every day. You want to drive a stanced F40 to DC every day?
Yeah, I'm pretty much not right in the head of some of the cars I've driven and owned. So definitely stance, baby.
I'm just picturing, the traffic report on WTOP of like, yep, and Mike's out again. He's trapped on 95. There's a bit of a crease in the road, and he's unable to get over it. Yeah,
He's teeter-tottering over it right now.
exactly. So then the last question we'll kind of leave out on here is, I do think the most important question any automotive journalist can ask of anyone ever. I'm not calling myself a hero, but I'm basically a hero for coming up for this. So what is I'm solving the world's problems here, basically.
Yes. 1 hour at a time.
Exactly. What is the hardest food to eat while driving?
Man, I would have to say it would probably be either pizza or chicken wings would probably be some of the hardest food you want to eat on the road. Just the mess alone on your shirt would pretty much qualify you as a road warrior moron, I guess, which I am usually.
Yeah. I'm impressed because I've been doing this question now for years, and pizza and chicken wings both have not come up before, which is, yeah, I'm impressed. Have you eaten pizza and or chicken wings while driving?
I've eaten pizza. I've never tried chicken wings. I'm not that brave to give that a try.
Mm-hmm. Again, this turns into stupid crap Ike's done into cars. I have done both. And I will say New York style pizza where they got like the droopy, drippy end bit. That's a mess, but it's doable. Chicken wings, yeah, there is no way not to make a mess with that. Which
make a mess when you're not driving with them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good one because that gets everywhere. I'm putting that one up on the wall of fame I don't have, which I really need to start putting up a wall of fame here. But that's pretty high up there because is there a particular chicken wing joint that you think makes the worst ones for driving?
Well, there's a couple places in Virginia called the Wing Factory, which when I lived in Virginia, I frequented and still take a drive over there. And their wings are also good and extra messy if you get some of the saucier versions.
That is true. And I'm going to have to try that because that's how nutty I am. So I decided to get this question in there because we had Jesse Combs on a while ago, and we were talking about hardest food to eat, and then we got onto hardest makeup to apply, and I feel like now I have to ask everyone that question. So what's the hardest makeup to apply?
Well, not from experience, but having a wife who usually has a bag and she applies a full face of makeup in 10 miles between our house and her work between each light. I would have to say that the eye pencil or whatever it is that you draw around your eye, that would probably have to be the hardest to apply on the road.
Mm-hmm. Also the scariest to apply on the road
very scary.
Yeah, like you pointed object like millimeters from your eyeball. So yeah. That's a good one. That's going up on the Wall of Fame, but that one's a new question, so we only got a couple answers in there.
I felt like I've accomplished something today then.
That's what I'm here for, is to help you feel like a better human being, I guess. That's what we do. So, Mike, obviously we can find you on WTOP talking about cars. We can find you on WTOP.com on the review section. How do people get to your car reviews on that website?
So you just go to WTOP.com, and in the keyword of the search term, you click in car review, and it should show up all the car reviews that are on there. Should be a couple of years worth of car reviews on there, and you can look and laugh, point, and be angry with the things I've written.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that we know you own a Via-Cross, we're not going to point and laugh because we know you get it. So
we know that I'm stuck in the head.
Yeah. So you're the right kind of crazy. You're our kind of crazy. Like, you know, like what is it? Ooga Aga, like one of us. Like, where else can we find you out there on the internet? Like, plug all the things that you want to plug, Mr. Mike Parris.
That's probably the best ways to see what I've done, and also maybe all car related, but like every year I do this fun thing with a company called Rally North America. What they do is they go out and they do almost like a scavenger hunt with cars, and it's all for charity. So it's kind of a fun that we do here like once a summer, and kind of get to drive our cars for a couple thousand miles and raise money for some worthy charity, and do your best to keep it on the track and not on the road. So it's definitely a cool way to spend your vacation a week in the summer every year.
That sounds like fun. I'm going to have to check out because I saw the article. I'm going to have to check it out. So when do you head off on that, or was it over with? You just happened, right?
We just had one. It's usually every July, and it's usually through some awesome roads throughout North America. This year it was it's a lot of West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia roads, and not much traffic on there. You don't want to be on 95 or one of the bigger roads. So the whole game is to get where you need to go without hitting a major road, and to see some cool sights throughout America.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to say goodbye to you off air. Everyone go check out his articles and listen to WTOP, especially if you're in the D.C. area, because you need that traffic report. And then you get the added bonus of hearing Mike's, lovely voice talking about cars every now and again. So, Mike, I'm going to give you some final words, and then I'm going to hit pause on the recorder here.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone, so much for listening. If you enjoyed what you hear, make sure you tell a friend, tell a loved one, tell a coworker, tell your worst enemy. Just whatever you can do to spread the word really helps out here. It's always fun week after week to see the stats climbing a little bit more, going up in the charts. It's I get a great sense of satisfaction from it. So thank you all for all of you who like, comment, subscribe. This is in YouTube. Can you tell what I've been doing? Thanks everyone for just sharing it. That's the best way to grow this as a podcast. Make sure you check out Track Monkey Apparel for all your automotive apparel needs. And thanks so much for listening. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thank you so much for listening. Please be safe out there.